Welcome back, my friends, to episode 20 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. I cannot believe it has been 20 episodes so far. This has been a pretty amazing experience talking to all these great people. I have such a great lineup over the next few weeks as well. But today, this conversation I am particularly excited about. Today, I'm joined by Torre. Kat is otherwise known as the Brand Architect. And a savant in that world, she certainly is. Kat and I have known each other for about 2 years, and every time we speak and every time we've made a public appearance together in some context, it's always just like talking to a friend. From my point of view, Kat has a very special skill set where she's able to connect and extract the passion of the person she's really talking to and help them really understand what's the thing that makes them tick and how is that going to be the navigator of their success. I experienced this firsthand in my own personal one-on-ones with Kat. For that reason, I knew this conversation was very, very important for this platform. Again, the goal is to create as much impact and add as much value to the audience as possible. This conversation does exactly that. Listen and watch closely. Listen to how Kat talks about her work, how she inspires her audience, and how she creates an impact in everything that she does. As always, I'm very excited for you to listen and watch this one. If you are new here, welcome. You've come to the right place, especially for this episode. Please remember to like and subscribe. New episodes of Beyond Bricks and Mortar are every single Wednesday. So without further ado, here she is, my good friend, Torre. You know what I thought about right before you walked in? I think this is the first time we're meeting in person.
It is. Yet I feel like I know you.
Right.
I see you as like a respected peer, a friend. It's just wild.
It is.
How you can make friends.
Yeah, I know, right? Like we've been talking to each other for like close to 2 years, I think. Mm-hmm. But we've never, ever seen each other in person.
I know. None of my friends live in the same city as me. I just make friends all around the country, so I have an excuse to travel.
Yeah.
Like that's my strategy.
How often are you in and out of New York?
Probably every other month.
And you're based in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I went to D.C., you had a long list of great recommendations for me.
I did. Yeah. You went there with your brother, right?
I did, yeah. We usually go once a year for APAC, and, you know, it's a good time to be in D.C.
Yeah.
And the weather's always beautiful.
Remind me, when was it last
March.
year? Oh, yeah. Like tail end of winter, it's starting to warm up. Yeah.
So I actually had an idea about how I wanted to commence this conversation. I wanted to start by sharing an experience of my own, which was the first real conversation that you and I had.
Okay.
A very memorable conversation for me, at least. For you, I feel like it's something you probably have every day. But the reason I want to do this is because I want to give the audience an understanding of what the impact is of one conversation with you and what really happens on one of those calls.
Yeah.
So I asked you a question, and the question I posed to you was rooted in a bit of a dilemma I was faced with in my own head. Mm-hmm. I find that there are two sides of me as it relates to my career. There is the side that's a real estate agent that maintains the utmost of professionalism, that takes my work very seriously. The other side of me is a creator. Someone who loves creativity, also loves hospitality, loves being the bridge between those two things. Mm-hmm. And I believe we were reviewing my website together, and the question was kind of embedded in how do I balance these two things in my life? My strong desire to be a creator, to be in that world, to go deeper into that world, as well as the side of me that loves what I do in real estate. And the answer you gave me, which came out of you pretty quickly, was that you're not supposed to balance those two things. We don't balance two things that we love in our life. We harmonize them. Mm. And that answer has been so impactful for me personally, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you, is that I've thought about it almost daily and how I think about my work. I had this vision when you shared this with me. Mm-hmm. It's if you picture like a tank of water and there's a wall in between the two sides of that tank, and one side is red water and one side is blue water. Mm-hmm. And those are the two sides of me. What essentially that conversation did with you and I was it lifted that wall and the colors collided and became purple. which is my favorite color.
It's your vibe, yeah.
Right. So can you share with the audience what is the true impact of going all in on you and embodying your true self in order to succeed in any entrepreneurial craft? And what are the implications of choosing not to do that?
Oh, well, I'm
You
glad
sure
that
you don't want a
started
whiskey?
with an easy question. Yeah, can we just pour
Yeah,
that? Let's just go straight for that.
Let's do it. That's a good idea.
Do you have another glass?
I do, yes. Ice or no?
So prepared. No, I like it neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a Japanese whiskey I thought you might appreciate.
Thank you.
I also have bourbon, and I have a few different single malts.
I
Up
think
to you.
neat. Let's go with the Japanese.
Got it.
I love bourbon in a Manhattan.
I love bourbon in general, but I'm more of a single malt person.
Yeah. Gosh, great questions.
That's what we're here for.
I love it. I don't think I have conversations like that all the time, but I don't think that I realize the full lifetime value of those conversations as I'm having them in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that reminder. What is the benefit of going all in?
You like the sounds of New York in the background, by
I
the way?
do. I mean, look,
I
DC
keep those there
Symphony.
on purpose.
It's totally fine. I always like to ground it in a dating analogy because most all of us, if we're fortunate enough, we're in relationships with our business partners, our romantic partners, whatever that looks like. And I think in dating, you can only pretend to be something you're not for so long until it catches up with you. And when you first meet someone, or you first launch a business, or you first want to create this brand, or you want to do something, you want to make your mark, sometimes we get this idea in our head of what we have to be, or the right way to do it, or we look at our role models and we try to copy and paste and replicate their success, not realizing or accepting that they have a different set of skills, they have a different background, they have different strengths, and copying and pasting doesn't really work. And it's so funny that you're asking this question today, because literally at the time of us recording this, I just put out a reel that said, you don't have a content problem, you have an identity problem.
That one hits.
Yeah. And I think what happens when we try to hide parts of ourselves, it makes it harder to show up. It heightens those feelings of like you're not good enough, or you're not deserving enough, or you're not being real or transparent with the people you want to do business with. And I think we do it for a variety of reasons, but when you do go all in on who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the light and the dark, I think you end up really being able to find your people.
Right.
And not to say that the work is always easy, but it's easier to show up when you can be yourself. Because
they're deploying passion in the work. You know, like I try to tell my team members that my goal for you is to help you fall in love with this work. I think what you reminded me of in that call more than anything was that my creativity and my love for going in that direction is exactly the reason for my success.
Yeah.
So it was more of just like a reminder and you know, a push to remain in that headspace. But yeah, when you're not doing what you love and using whatever the work is as a vehicle for that, you burn out really quick.
Yes. I always say, like, anytime I'm working with a client and they're feeling stuck or frustrated, they're focused on the negative, on how tough business is right now, I'm like, okay, let's step back from the computer. Let's close the laptop. I need you to get out of your head, out of the screen, and out into the world and back into your body. Because regardless of you working in real estate or me working in consulting, we weren't born that way.
Right.
We were born human. And this is something that I love to do because it reminds you of why you got started in the first place. What were the things about your past that make you now want to help people and bridge that gap? What are the things that light you up, like in your DNA? And if you can find a vehicle that allows you to embody your passion, that's kind of like, have you heard of this Japanese concept called Ikigai?
Yes, I've heard the word, but I'd love to hear your explanation, given your closeness to the subject matter.
Very much so. So it is a quad Venn diagram, so 4 overlapping circles. And the 4 tenets of this Japanese principle are A, what are you good at? So you can be good at a lot of things, but B, what do you enjoy doing? Because those things don't always overlap. C, what does the world need? Truly, what does the world need? Not what you need, what your family needs, the world. Like, think bigger, think generationally, which I think is such an important message this day and age, with everybody talking about how short our attention spans are and you have to do short form. And
it's like we have to keep into that mindset because it's already been around for quite a while. Like Sony didn't want to be known for making the best electronics. They wanted Japan to be known for making the best electronics.
Exactly.
Like seeing them work is bigger than ourselves as a mission.
And then the 4th is what you can be paid for. So if you can find something that you are good at, and by the way, this could be natural talent or ways that you upskill yourself. What do you love to do? What would you do if you weren't getting paid for it? I love asking that question of clients. What does the world need? What would make it better? Because that kind of will keep you going if you have children, if you have grandchildren, right? Through the tougher days, you're like not just doing it for yourself, like woe is me.
Yeah, it's legacy.
And then what can you also make money doing? Because like we got to eat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So Ikigai is the convergence of all 4 of those things. And I think the people that I admire and the type of person I strive to be is like always being as close to that center as possible. Not saying I always achieve it, but the journey is a destination.
I might have to like frame that Venn diagram, put on my wall.
And just be like, why the fuck am I doing this? Oh, wait, that's why.
Yes.
Because it feels really, really good.
I'm going to draw it.
When you're centered. There we go.
I'm going to draw it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that very much. You've coined the description of what you do as being the brand architect. Love that, by the way.
Thank you.
So I kind of want to pull back on the timeline a little bit for a minute. What led you to making your life about brand building, and what would you say qualifies you as an expert in that world?
Oh, yes. Great questions. So it's funny. I originally came up with a term. I think I was journaling. It was when I was still living in Miami. And I literally remember it. I was sitting on our couch and we had these big, like, beautiful windows. We have this old school bungalow that we bought in South Florida. So they had...
You still have it?
Yes. We're renting it out now.
Nice. Oh, you told me you're doing Airbnb, right?
Yes. Well, long-term renters. We'll do Airbnb, maybe. I don't know. That seems like a huge headache. We're so lucky with our renters. They're like empty nesters. Their son's a chef, so they love that they're renting from a chef.
Oh,
it's like
honestly, I love that world.
Alignment. Yeah,
I love that world. The reason why I jumped to Airbnb is because I'm thinking about hospitality.
Of course, right? Curating an experience and making it unforgettable.
And how many people on Airbnb are marketing their homes like their apartments for sale and not like experiences,
right?
You know?
Yes.
You would probably crush that world. Like Airbnb
probably
arbitrage.
Would. Oh my gosh, seriously. So I was sitting in our living room, and the sunlight was coming through, and my partner Will had built this beautiful bonsai garden. I was just staring at it, and the phrase brand architect came to me, and this was in early 2022, almost over 2 years, like at the time of like us recording this podcast, and I put it out in a post on Instagram. Nothing happened. Nobody paid attention. A couple people commented, but it like didn't take off. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to like let that marinate. Maybe it wasn't the right time. I knew it was the right idea. But you know how you can have like great ideas and like the timing not be correct?
And you start to question if it's actually a good idea.
And then you trash it because you're not willing to be patient,
huge mistake.
Right?
Yeah.
How many works of art and masterpieces did you just like trash because your attention span couldn't handle it?
Yeah. You also have to trust your taste a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really important in the world of being creative, is you have to trust your taste.
Yeah. But that starts with trusting yourself.
Yes.
Which is a whole other podcast with more whiskey.
Yeah. We have plenty.
Right. So, early 2022, and you can scroll back in my Instagram and look at this, and I put it out there, but the ethos wasn't fully formed, and I don't think it was the right time. And then I hired my good friend Candace last year, so almost a year later, to redo my visual identity, because the visual identity of my 20s was very bold and powerful, but a little naive. I had like a powerful red, this like gold and black and white. And I was kind of still wearing the look and feel of like Girl Friday. That was kind of my brand in my 20s when I had my agency and I was working with startups like all throughout South Florida. And I had coined Brand Architect, but I hadn't infused it into everything else. And so when I hired Candace to build up my new visual identity, she's such a shithead. So I love her. She's my friend, which is why I can say that, as well as my podcast partner.
She's your partner on the podcast.
She is, yeah. I love her. And I mean that as a compliment. It's a form of affection with me. But the reason I say that is because we have a close relationship. So when I hired her to do this and she was going to show me the initial concept, she was like, okay, Kat. She's like, I've got one concept that I'm going to judge you for if you go with. And then I have another concept that's probably going to like push you outside your comfort zone. And that's the one you should go with. Like if you know Candace, you can totally picture her saying that. Like you met her when you were on our podcast.
Yeah.
So she shows me. The first concept is kind of like a tweak on my existing colors. The second concept, the more challenging one, had this deep, rich Merlot, like very similar to your purple, but different. And then it had a really bright pop of coral, and then this like beautiful soft lavender. And when I saw that, I was like, I can be very bold, very clever, very witty, but playful, but I also have a lot of feminine to my masculine. Like I'm very dynamic in that way. I turn it on depending on, what situation I'm in. And that kind of makes me sound bipolar, but I'm not, I promise.
No. Well, I think that that women naturally have certain advantages with respect to empathy and, certain emotions that they can deploy. And when you're helping someone build a brand, there is a strong level of emotion there, because people feel attached to what they know.
Yeah. So when I saw it, I was like, that's it. I was like, that's me. That's the me of my 30s and maybe into my 40s, but maybe I'll go through another rebrand or a new era.
Yeah. And sometimes you just know. Like
sometimes you know.
Clicks.
Like she knows. She's so good at seeing to the heart of things. And so I relaunched Brand Architect with that color scheme and with the typography that she had chose. She gave me visual guidelines and it made a splash. Like everybody was commenting on it. They were texting me. They were bringing it up in workshops. And I was like, okay, so everything in its right time. It's time for me to step into being the brand architect.
Yes.
And why brand architect? I love the idea of being intentional and going in a certain order of operations. I do think it's important to be flexible, but I'll use a house analogy when it comes to branding, or even just like branding, content, marketing, sales, all of it. A lot of people will want to go to West Elm or Crate and Barrel or Wayfair and want to pick out, the decor and the throw pillows and the wallpaper swatches and the tile and all of that. They're going to like, let me do this, Yeah. I'm like, that's great. We want to decorate the house. That is your brand, but you haven't even poured the foundation.
Yes. Yeah.
Is your house made of CB? Is it stick frame? Like what is it made of? What is the foundation that people are going to stand on and feel when they're interacting with you? And so I like it because I always go back to the house analogy. I mean, I happen to work a lot with real estate agents, but it works for anybody because everybody, if they're fortunate enough, has a home, and a place to lay their head. And so they understand, like, why would you decorate a house that doesn't even have a foundation yet? You gotta pour the foundation, the footers, the rebar. Yeah. Even before that, you gotta figure out where the house lives, your brand positioning.
Yes.
Level and grade that lot. Get a clean slate. What are you working with? Who are you for? Who are you not for? What's your attributes, your personality, your vibe, your language, like all those invisible things that end up really having a visible impact. But people who don't know about that as much as I do, they skip to the shiny stuff, which I totally understand. Yeah. Which is why I'm glad, because
that's just not wanting to do the work.
It is. Yeah.
That's like rooted in impatience, which is like, and I've said this so many times, is that like in my religion, in my faith, when someone wants to convert to Judaism, the rabbi's supposed to talk them out of it.
That's what I do.
Like when people come to me,
I actively tell people, you're not ready.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah. Like people like want advice about getting into real estate. And most of the time it's like, maybe don't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not like Bravo, guys.
No. Well,
Or
there's
Netflix.
literally nothing that, pulls the curtain back on what it really takes to succeed in this business.
Yeah.
It's part of why I wanted to do this, like sharing experiences with professionals and really going through their journey. Most of them have this, like most of the seasoned professionals in my business have the same advice. Like, you need to be really patient. It takes a long time. People don't really realize what it takes to succeed in our business.
Yeah.
And having resources like you, coaches, I have a coach that I'm very, very close with. I've been working with her for like 10 years.
Wow.
And she's amazing. And she's not a real estate person, which I like. She's like an icon in fashion, but she's an expert negotiator. And she's European. She's from Italy. So she understands like what I understand, which is the finer things in life.
And she brings a global perspective.
Yes.
So good to get out of your bubble.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. So, I'm very grateful to have that sort of thing, because I don't know that I would have been able to stay in real estate. Like, I went through a real like identity crisis in real estate 5 or 6 years into it. And that's kind of when like I started to amp up working with a coach.
Yeah. That's when you have to double down.
Yeah, it was actually like 3 or 4 years in. That's when it was. And I was like struggling to stay inspired. And then I met her, and like we went off to the races. It clicked, and like I was able to really unlock my identity as a creator in this world.
Yeah.
And then my conversation with you melded those two worlds. So yeah, I feel like it's like you reach a certain point in your career where you start to look back and realize you've had a journey. And we're still going on it. It's very difficult.
There is no finite endpoint.
No,
which
and
is like
the work doesn't stop, because it's very difficult to live and survive in New York City. We're all doing it. We're all trying.
Well, I'm watching from afar,
Yes.
saying hats off to y'all, because anytime I visit this city, I never need an alarm clock, and I'm an alarm clock snooze 3 times, much to Will's dismay type of gal. This city wakes me up with its
You snooze
energy.
a lot, right?
I snooze a lot.
Yeah.
I love
my
sleep.
wife does
Sleep's
that too.
amazing.
I can't stand it. It's like one alarm.
I'm going to connect you and Will over
another.
text, and you guys can commiserate with the fact that you ended up with the opposite.
It's funny. I had a friend who was like never able to get to his workout on time. He was never able to get to his workout on time, no matter, like, he would always show up late, whether it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I was asking him once, I'm like, dude, what's your deal? How come you can never be on time? He's like, honestly, I have 6 alarms, and I go through all of them. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I can't get up in the morning. I'm like, you should try 1 alarm.
Yeah, and stop telling yourself you can't, because
Right.
words have power. They're like spells that you cast on yourself, and if you keep saying you can't,
I was betting on his anxiety. I was like, if you
you went that route.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was like, if you have 1 alarm and you don't have more,
Yeah,
I think you're going to wake up.
that's true.
The next morning, he was there on time.
You give yourself that buffer, right?
Yeah.
What is that law where it says, whatever the timeline of a goal or a target is that you set, you will achieve it in that timeline. So the timeline's arbitrary.
Yeah, and the goal has to scare you in order to really work.
Yeah, wake you up,
Yeah.
shock you out of apathy,
Yes.
because you're expecting something different, but you're doing the same thing. I mean,
Yeah,
it just doesn't math.
yeah, I'm with you. And actually, that leads me to a different question. Recently, my coach, her name is Carmen. Carmen gave me a piece of advice that sounded simple, but deeply applies to me in my work.
Okay.
She said, cancel comfort. It's written on my board.
I see that.
Remove your need for comfort from the equation and activate your passion. It's not comfortable, the work you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you stop feeling like you need comfort, it won't bother you that it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
So she said, activate your passion. So my question for you is, what happens when we stay inside our comfort zone?
Well, I'm gonna use another analogy, because I'm very aware branding and personal development can be very nebulous, right? Hard to measure, hard to understand.
It's not binary by any means.
No, it's a spectrum, like anything in life. So this is actually an analogy that Will shared with me, because I always beta test some of my more out there ideas on him, because I know if I can explain what I want to explain to him and he's not in my field, I know that it will land.
Like if he gets it.
If he gets it as a chef in hospitality, I know that it's going to translate. So the analogy he shared with me, we were talking about the type of clients that I want to work with, because I did a whole repositioning earlier this year. And he sent me this video. It was like a minute long, and it was this rabbi talking about a lobster, or lobsters in general.
I know exactly what
you
you're
know
talking
exactly what I'm
about.
talking about. Oh, I love it. I love it. So it talked about how when lobsters outgrow their shell, they start to feel really tight and constricted, and it gets painful. And they can't continue to move and grow and survive. Like, they need to be able to move and hunt and hide from predators. And so when their shell becomes too tight, they go through the painful process of molting their shell, of like shedding their shell. And it's not comfortable by any means. And then they have to go and hide under a rock.
It's like you're forced to get out of that.
Well, they feel all the symptoms, the signs and symptoms,
Yeah.
right? They're like, oh, this is not going to allow me to live.
Yeah.
And so then they have to go and hide because they're exposed, right, in that process of molting their shell and growing a new one. And then once they've grown their new shell, it's a little bit too big, but they can move freely, and they can, go about their day, and they can hunt and survive and thrive. And I think when people stay within their comfort zones, regardless of age or where they're at or level of income or, career-wise, whatever, the signs and symptoms get really, really painful.
Yeah.
But they, are human beings. We're wired to want to avoid pain and increase pleasure. Like a sore tooth, they'll just kind of like live around it. They'll look the other way. They'll kind of numb themselves or distract themselves. They're like, oh, I kind of don't really enjoy hanging out with my friends anymore. It's like deja vu every single time we go out talking. It's the same conversation. I'm not growing. I'm not getting anything from them. But, I've known them for 10 years, and it's like hard to meet new friends, and I've got a really busy schedule, so I'll just keep them around. Or they'll do that in romantic relationships, or they'll do that in a job that they'll just work for the weekend, and they'll feel the pains of outgrowing their shell, but they won't admit it and go through the painful process, temporarily painful process of molting that and moving beyond. So I think it's like death by 1,000 cuts. That's what happens.
It definitely applies in relationships as well. Like if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you can get stuck in that relationship for a long time, for years, because you feel that because you're in that comfort zone and you're comfortable with your day to day. But that's why you start working for the weekends and you fall out of love with the work.
Comfort doesn't mean healthy.
No.
Comfort doesn't mean restful. I'm a huge fan of rest. Rest has great ROI. Don't confuse that with comfort.
Yeah.
You must have done your homework, because I actually was in a narcissistic relationship.
So was I.
Years ago. You were?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, joke's on them, because like my life is so much better now.
I know, right? But you only feel that, and by the way, you realize it more every day, but you feel that after you exit, and it's even like, I remember the first day, this is if I'm, talking about a work relationship, the first day, it was like a mind-boggling difference.
Oh, I had no sense of my identity because I had given up all control. That's probably why I'm so committed now. I'm like, don't talk to me about your content. Don't talk to me about your team. Don't talk to me about your numbers. I'm like, who are you? Because I know if your identity is firm, everything else, you'll find a way to work itself out. You'll Google or YouTube it and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And this is how I talk to my team members. Again, like, we're trying to help you fall in love with this work, with this business.
Yeah.
Like, Maya on my team is in the dog treat business.
Yeah.
She's obsessed with dogs. Her identity is like is dogs. She loves it, really loves that world.
Yeah.
So I try to help her understand that by building your dog treat business, you will build your real estate business. Like doing the thing that you love, activating your passion, like that's how you will stay in this business for a really long time. Especially like getting through the early years, which is like Hell Week for the Navy SEALs. Like you really have to give it your everything to have staying power in real estate.
Yeah.
And you have to constantly negotiate with your mind and your body to find more strength to stay in it. So the only way to really like make that a little bit easier on yourself is to fall in love with it.
Yeah.
I met with a real estate agent yesterday who showed me his Instagram page, and it was just very real estate, but it wasn't him. Like this is someone who comes from a multicultural background, just like you do, and like
he's hiding that.
Yeah, he's hiding that.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't think he's doing it intentionally,
but unconsciously. I mean, I did the same thing for years.
Yeah, well, in any entrepreneurial craft, but we're using real estate as an example. Like, people believe there's a uniform way to do this job, like a binary way you're supposed to do it. You know, post the same crap. The same vanilla things. The same market updates. Everybody wants to do a newsletter. Like, it's so personal, our business, especially in residential, because when you're selling homes, you're taking clients through an emotional process, and clients want to feel seen and heard and understood. That's why I believe so much also in hospitality.
Yes.
That's like, and not in service. Like, service is like, marketing an apartment effectively using all your traditional tools.
That's the on-paper stuff.
Yes, exactly. That's service.
That's the basics. You don't get rewarded for doing the fundamentals. Don't skip them.
No, you can't. Service is important.
It is.
And it's a skill.
Yeah.
But it's not the spirit of what we're trying to do. It's not like the thing that keeps clients coming back to you. And I find that this applies in everything. Like, we recently took our daughter to see a hand surgeon because she had an accident in an elevator. She's 2. And they knew a 2-year-old was coming in. So when they walked in the door, all of like the nurses' staff like deployed this incredible warmth towards her. And like, you don't see that in doctors' offices.
No,
usually they're cold.
Sterile.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they chose to go this way, and it completely changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
Changes the way my daughter feels, when she has to go like get a wound on her hand looked at, which could be a scary thing for a little girl.
But she's a kid, so there's going to be many more instances like that.
So it's just like when people take the time to think about and consider this stuff, the impact it brings to the work is like, it's crazy. It's immeasurable.
Yeah.
And I only realized maybe over the last 2 years how important this really is. Very thankful for the fact that I already love it, and I feel like I live deeply in that world.
Yeah.
Even like when I think, like you pointed out the drinks when you first said it, but like for me, this is just about like helping a guest feel comfortable to enjoy their time here. Yes. I'm so sick of seeing the same old podcast sets and the same old stuff. Like,
I agree.
I think podcasting should be personal too.
It is. People listening to us, like wherever they are, we're literally in their ear.
Yes.
They are listening to our voices, which is as unique to us as our faces are.
Yes.
And, I was talking to a coach who specializes in human design. Have you ever heard of human design?
Define it for me.
It is based on an Eastern philosophy, and it kind of refers to energy management as it relates to the chakras. So it is a bit, I would say, woo-woo, but for me, it's just more information. And whether or not I think it's correct, it gives me contrast and more information with which to determine how I manage my energy, how I leverage my strengths. And one thing I remember that she told me that really stuck out was to use my voice more and more and more in as many ways as I could. And it was funny, I had met with her when I was really thinking about going all in on speaking. And Candace and I had just launched the podcast, and I wasn't really sure about it because just a few short years ago, 2015 to 2018, I was in that really toxic relationship where I had no voice.
Was it a work relationship or a romantic relationship?
It was both. So I like to do things dramatically. I just wanted to get
all in.
All in,
Yeah,
I just make healthier all-in choices now. But I think I recall still, and I can talk about it without being triggered, which is like just such a gift now that I've done that healing work. But I know what it's like to not have a voice. And so now to be able to use my voice to help other people is the best revenge, but also like a very fulfilling purpose.
I'm so
at
with
the end
you.
Of the day.
I feel like we have a lot in common with a lot of this stuff.
That doesn't surprise me though.
No.
I feel like we knew it unconsciously when we first talked.
And like and I feel we've said this before because we've done a few like public talks together. That whenever we talk, it just feels like talking to a friend.
Easy.
Yeah, it's easy. But I feel the same way. A few people told me that I have a good radio voice.
You have a great radio voice.
Thank you.
You don't have a face for radio though, too. So like that's the other good thing.
Yes. So that's why, like, Carmen said to me, she's like, I think you're nuts for not doing a podcast. Like, you always talk about wanting to add value to people. That's why I purposely take on young and new real estate agents. I like to take a professor approach to real estate. I give like lectures to my team members. So like she's like, I think you're crazy. Like, you have an opportunity to add real value to the audience just by talking to people.
Yeah.
You know, so I've just drawn a great deal of fulfillment from this. You know, I don't know how long it's going to go on. I gave myself a goal of 52 episodes and, you know, a very firm commitment to not miss a week, you know, to be relentless in making sure I don't miss a week, which is definitely hard because most of this I do myself. I've only recently brought in someone to help me and buy back that time. But I really love this, you know, and it's like, it's that melding of that creator and real estate professional, and keeping in that world, because there's really no one who like no other real estate agents that really produce it on their own. You know, it's always with the help or assistance, but I feel like I put so much into learning how to do all this stuff, how to edit video, how to be like in this mind frame as a creator. And that's just where I choose to live.
I think it makes an impact too. You can tell when you outsource something. And that's why, like, whenever I'm making recommendations for clients, like the do versus delegate question comes up a lot. And I tell them, I'm like, delegate until you can't anymore. If you start to sense that the soul, the essence of it, the traction, the momentum is being lost, then you need to find time back in your schedule to make time for it, because otherwise...
Or put in the time to help the person you're working with understand your vision. Yeah, like when the gentleman who helps me now with my podcasts approached me, we just took some time to have a few conversations to get on the same page. I really wanted to help him understand my vision and my brand, and he really does have a great grasp on it. And like every time I see the finished product, I feel like this sigh of relief. Like I feel great. And
it's nice to be supported.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of us like just like we'll throw the work on someone else. Like, can you just do this and take care of it? And I need this time back. But it's like you need to also put in the time to help that person get aligned with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And I think that's, you know, like, of course he's incredibly talented.
Right.
But because we're aligned, you know,
that's the magic.
The finished product is always magic. Yeah. So thanks, Chandler. So,
shout out to Chandler.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Define leather jacket energy. This is like one of my favorite things I've seen you put out.
And I have the leather jacket right here.
It's right on the back of the chair. I love it.
It's a part of my identity. The short version, to quote the late but great Anthony Bourdain, is that it's my version of BDE, Big Dick Energy.
Okay, I like it.
He coined that sometime in 2018, which is oddly enough, like that was a huge crucible year for me. So I just find it so perfect.
He coined that?
I mean, that's what I found.
Really?
Anybody listening or watching this can like Google it and DM me and prove me wrong.
That's an Anthony Bourdain quote, and I'm a big fan. I was always a big fan.
Yeah, like 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
On Twitter, somewhere, somehow. That's what I could find. So if there was somebody who coined it before, let me know. I always want to give credit where credit's due. But so the birth of it was actually in the wake of me leaving that relationship. This was like winter of 2018. I was living in Fort Lauderdale on my friend's couch because I had about like $8 in my bank account at the time. She took me in, and this was a friend that I had alienated during the relationship, but she welcomed me back, like no questions asked.
That's so nice.
Incredible. And I actually just went to her wedding in Mexico a few weeks ago. Cool. So it was like lovely to see that full circle.
Did you and Will go together?
We did, yeah.
That's fun. And
I introduced her. I was like, this is the guy. This is the right guy.
She had never met him before?
She'd never met him, no, because COVID, and then she moved to Colorado with her family. And so I remember we were in Fort Lauderdale and she was like, we need to go shopping, because I had no clothes. I literally left with like a couple suitcases that could fit on a bellhop cart. Like I even have a picture of it. Maybe we can like include it somewhere here.
Sure. Send it to me.
I took a picture of the bell cart of like everything that I own could fit on there. And I was like, oh man, all right, I really am doing this thing. Okay, there's no turning back. And she took me shopping. We went to the Galleria Mall in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and we went to Express. And she was kind of like a fashionista. I've become more fashion conscious, but I definitely learned a lot from her and Will now. And
Will is into fashion?
oh my gosh, yes.
Really?
Very much so.
You don't see that in a chef very often.
No, but oh man, he can put together an outfit like nobody's business.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he's gonna love that I said that. The like Leo in him is like, yes.
Does he listen to all this stuff that you do?
He might listen to this. Yeah, he listens to our podcast
I appreciate
every now
that.
and then. Yeah. So we walked into Express and I found like, this is the same black leather jacket, by the way. I still have it. Like, talk about quality.
The same one on your website?
The same one on my website that I have in this.
Do you have like
frame.
8 of them? Same
No,
one?
I should. But I actually had 2. So I tried on the black one. And at the time I had platinum hair because I was definitely ready for a rebrand. I had gone platinum a few months before I left my ex. And
Dramatic,
I just
like
knew.
you said.
Exactly. I don't go big.
What's
or
your
go
natural
home.
hair color?
It's like an ashy brown.
Wow, so you really went dramatic
I
with
did.
with the
yeah.
platinum.
I was like,
it's cool.
I'm not leaving the salon until I look like Khaleesi.
It's like it's like an X-Men thing almost.
Literally,
Yeah.
yeah, Storm. There we go.
Yeah.
So I tried on the black leather jacket. And my friend Mariah, she was like, okay. She's like, yeah, this looks good. And then she was like, wait a second. And she goes, and then she goes around the corner, and she comes back with this red leather jacket. And it's like this deep maroon color, almost similar to the color that Candace chose for me as a part of my visual identity. And she's like, put this on. And so I do. And with my platinum hair and like my pale ass skin, it looks like so good. So good. Yes, I was pale living in Florida. The joke is that if you live in Florida, you never
what's the
go
matter
to
with
the
you?
beach.
You never went
I
you never
know.
went outside?
No, that's the thing. Tourists have time to go to the beach. Us hustling.
I asked Coin too. I'm like, dude, why are you so light colored? Like, get outside a little bit.
No, and he lives right on a lake. He can go and sunbathe like a lizard on a rock, and he never does. So she convinces me to get both jackets. They were like buy one, get one. And I remember having like a couple hundred in my account. I spent like 140 of that on these jackets. Yeah. You want to talk about like emotional?
Jackets.
I believed in the jackets.
That's why you've had the same one for all this time.
That's why, yes. And so I remember just wearing that jacket. I would wear it when I would go out to pitch clients. I would wear it when I would go out with my friend Mariah. I would wear it on dates. I wore it because it was the first thing that I bought for myself after, leaving my ex and like leaving that partnership. And it just became this like symbol of confidence for me. And that it was something that I chose. And it was very much stating that, I kind of like to do things differently. Kind of like almost an outlaw-esque. Very much outlaw, like in my outlaw era at that time. And it just encapsulates confidence and being true to yourself and not hiding that.
Encapsulates you.
Yeah, who I am. Yeah. I do things a little differently. I'm on paper a nursing school dropout who's now built multiple multi-million-dollar startup brands, and
I'm
I work
a college
with incredible
dropout.
people. No way.
Yeah. By the way, I left college with 15 credits left.
Oh my God, me too. I have like 8 or 10.
Yeah, it's like nothing.
Yeah.
I just got so immersed in my work.
Yeah.
That I was just like, I'm just not doing this. It's
I'm not
pointless.
feeling it. Yeah. I look at college now differently. So Will's daughter, she's 17 going on 18. She's starting at college in the summertime, graduating high school this year. And I look at college as giving you that social experience, being able to get out of your hometown, decide if you want to make your own way or if you want to return to your hometown. Mm-hmm. Either option. If it's correct for you, that's fantastic.
Right.
So I don't necessarily look at it as...
If you haven't figured yourself out yet.
Yeah. It's good to get away from those hometown influences so you can be like, okay, who am I? Like, what do I want to do? Not what do my parents think I should do, or my grandparents, or what is everybody else I went to school with for the past 12 years doing? Yeah.
Well, I think the only regret I have in that context is not finishing college, but not finishing what I started. I find like there are some implications to doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think for me, maybe quitting or giving up feels a little easier than it should.
Yeah.
Not with like, I find myself to be incredibly resilient in my career, but like I'll easily bail on a workout or I'll easily bail on something mid-process if I feel like it's starting to get to me.
Yeah.
And I think that is the implication and the negative impact of not finishing what you started in the early ages of your life. Becoming more present with that over the last several years has trained that muscle for me. But still, it's still a challenge from time to time. Like I feel like it's important to finish what you start. Like 15 credits left, I should have taken it to the finish line.
Yeah.
I'll never end up doing it because I just have
either.
no time for it.
No.
And it's like I would rather put those hours into getting licensed in other states or, doing
or
other
taking
work.
on a new mentee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, doing other things in my creative world. But at the time, I technically could have finished. I just chose not to.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a litmus test for that. Can I share it with you?
Please.
So we hear that a lot, right? Like, finish what you started, keep your word. If you make a promise, don't break it, or
it's an integrity thing.
All of these horrible things, right?
It's what builds integrity.
It does. However, I've also learned, and this is the question that I ask myself if I'm in the middle of a really uncomfortable workout, or if I've committed to something and I'm questioning whether or not I should finish it, if I've said yes to a client and did I say yes for the right reasons. So I ask myself, I envision, whatever it is that you're making a commitment to, picture yourself having completed it. See yourself on the other side. Does it feel good to have done the thing, whatever the thing is? If the answer is yes, accept whatever uncomfortableness, temporary pain, late nights that will go along with it, extra studying hours, whatever it may be. Keep your word if it would feel good to have done it.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference when you don't.
Yeah.
This morning I bitched out on my workout. I'm in the gym usually at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
This morning I woke up and I was just like, fuck that. But it really it carries over to the rest of your day.
It does.
It really does.
So for you, skipping your morning workout, envision what that 2:00 afternoon crash when you've been answering emails and putting out fires and talking to your team, how will you feel in that afternoon time if you skip the workout?
Worse.
Then do the workout.
Yeah, of course. In fact, you're more likely to crash.
Exactly.
Working out gives you energy.
It does.
But it's like the hard, and it's kind of a good thing that it's really the hardest part of the day.
Right.
The hardest part of the day is doing a workout at 5:30 in the morning.
How fucking lucky are we that that's the hardest part of our day?
Right. And by the way,
that's live and what we do.
That's another thing. Is
so lucky.
Perspective is so critical, and I've been like going deeper into perspective over the last couple of months, more so because I get stuck when there are financial concerns. I let the concerns of the next deal or the next paycheck to cover expenses. We're a family of 4 living in the city. I have tuition. I have a lot of things. So I get nervous about the racking expenses, and that sometimes makes me stuck. And what I realized is that this is a perspective issue. I'm forgetting the fact that I have everything.
Yeah.
I have a family. I live in New York City. I have an amazing job. I have my freedom, my own office, a great family. I have lots of great friends and a great network. And I've built this long career and I've stayed with it and I have a good reputation in it. What the fuck are you so upset about? And actually, I was having this conversation with Carmen. She was sitting in that chair and she drew this on my wall, which was, she says, you're here. She draws this dot. And you're just upset that you're not there.
Right.
And that was it. And I've added to it since. But
yes.
It made so much sense. It was so simple. We have to keep our lives in perspective as we move about the journey. And this is part of canceling comfort. Stop feeling this desire or need or must to have comfort in your life. It's not comfortable to become successful. And this is what I've been thinking about over the last couple of months. And it's really helped me push faster and harder in what I'm doing.
It ignites you.
Yeah.
I think, you could even do something on the cost of comfort. and what that looks like 5 years from now,
That's
10
a good
years
one.
from now,
I'm
right?
going to add that into my coaching sessions.
There we go. I love a good alliteration.
I love that.
Yeah.
On the heels of that, you've been a big part of Serhant in coaching and mentoring young agents on brand building. What is the most common mistake most real estate agents are making now creatively?
Ooh.
And you can start by getting into a little bit about what you do with Serhant and the Pro
Yeah.
program, a program that I've just recently joined, which I'm really excited to become a part of.
Oh, you're going to be such an incredible addition to our roster. I'm so excited
Thank you.
for clients to be able to work with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to doing really well and then coming to you for more money.
There we go. Building evidence.
Yes.
So the one thing I'll say before I answer your question about Serhant, there's that Tony Robbins saying of proximity is power.
Yes.
Respectfully, love Tony. But I think perspective is more powerful than proximity, because you might not always be able to have the means to be in proximity with greatness, but you can always have perspective. And you can always just put on that CIA agent hat and find the evidence of where you're supported, of how far you've come, of where your resources are, of thinking, okay, Kat a year from now, Ariel a year from now, what advice would they give me in this moment to solve my current problem? Because I'm going to be that person eventually. I just need to tap into it, pull it into the present, because it's all you. You all have it.
Yeah.
So
Amen to that. I'm
be a
fan.
CIA agent. So yes, with Serhant, it's so funny. My prior startup was acquired, and I was kind of like technically jobless, but just between jobs, figuring out my next move. And I interviewed for a marketing position originally. And God bless his heart, Raf Angarita, shout out to Raf. He was like, I have no doubt you'd be a great addition to our marketing team, but we actually have a need in our branding department. I was like, okay, tell me more. I'm like, well, we have this high-level mentorship program. It needs a chair, somebody to oversee it, to own it, to train the strategist, to oversee client placement, to inform the editorial, to host workshops, to like make the thing go. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had asked him too. I was like, so this is called Serhant. I was like, is this any way affiliated with that guy on $1 Million Listing? Because I used to watch, background in hospitality, Vanderpump Rules on Bravo TV.
My
that
wife
was like
loves that show.
so good. I mean,
She knows a quick way to make me fall asleep is to put that show on.
There we go. And then she has control of the remote. She's genius. So I'd watch Vanderpump Rules. I would see commercials for $1 Million Listing. So when I heard that Ryan Serhant was the CEO and founder of the company that I was considering working for, it was actually a detractor for me, because I had worked with celebrities and athletes and notable individuals in Miami. I think there's still NDAs in place, so I can't name specific names, but
It's all right. I'll squeeze them out of you later.
Yeah, just keep pouring the Centaur. And so it was actually a detractor. And I was like, Raph, I was like, how involved is he? What's the vision? What's the long-term goal? He's like, no. He's a businessman. This is a business. It's an education business. We want to change lives. We want to give back. We want to make an impact. We want to ungate everything that, he's essentially been the guinea pig for over the past 10, 12 years, and pour it into the next generation of real estate agents. And I was like, oh, okay, that
sounds good.
That sounds good. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
So I came on board in summer of 2021, and now it's coming up on 3 years.
Yeah.
And the program's grown. We, have the branding program in which we help agents build their brands on and offline. We create that omnipresence. We do help them with the foreground activities of their business that keep the lights on, sending reactivation emails and texts and like coaching them on negotiations, like that thing. But then we also work on the background stuff, the branding, the long-term play that's going to make them independently successful. Because one of the bones I have to pick with a lot of other coaching programs out there, and what I liked about Ryan's and what he did differently and what we do differently, is that we're kind of agnostic. Yes, we're attached to a particular brokerage, but when we work with clients, our priority is the client. We want to build the client's individual personal brand so that they have the luxury of choosing where they hang their license or what team they're a part of, or maybe they want to go and start their own team.
Well, there's a lot of brilliance there, because it also builds what is already, and I think what I've realized is that nobody's really aware of this yet, but Serhant now, as it stands, has the largest global referral network that exists.
Yeah.
It's bigger than the Knight Frank referral program that Douglas Elliman has.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger than all of these connected networks. And it's because of this. It's because of Sell It.
And I really appreciate, and I think this doesn't get sold a lot as a part of the larger vision. And maybe it's just Ryan being humble or not wanting to lead with it, but he does have a very abundant mindset when it comes to creating this business that essentially makes quote unquote other competitor agents better. Mm-hmm. But what I appreciate about him and what I appreciate about our clients is that you make somebody strong, you teach them how to fish. If they want to fish with you, cool. If they want to go and fish somewhere else, great.
Yeah.
It's no skin off our back. There's
plenty for everybody.
There's plenty of business to go around.
Also, you can be, like, I've used this analogy before too. Like, I can go buy Thomas Keller's cookbook, but I'm not going to cook the way they do in the French Laundry.
No.
So it's...
No, you can try.
Yeah, but... you can cook another chef's recipe. You're not going to cook it the same way. Mm-hmm. You're going to cook it your way. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty for everybody. We all have our way,
Yeah. Which, by the way, quick side story about French Laundry and a note on hospitality and anybody listening, you want to stand out. French Laundry is one of 2 restaurants that I've ever dined at that asked me if I was left or right-handed.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Because one of 2 restaurants, and everybody listening, has anybody ever asked you if you're left-handed? Has any server ever asked you, are you right or left-handed? And
my goodness.
I know.
Which hand to put the knife in?
Because I was wearing a watch on my right hand. The server explained this to me afterwards.
So brilliant.
Blew me away. This was like 12 years ago now that I dined at that restaurant. I don't remember what we ate.
Remember it. Yeah.
But I remember that the server asked me.
Yeah. They didn't ask me that at Per Se. Per Se's pretty lame in comparison to the French Laundry, I feel like.
Yeah. But I remember asking her afterward. I was like, how did you know? She's like, well, I noticed when you came in that your watch was on your right hand. Wow. And typically we wear the watch on our non-dominant hand. Yeah. And I know how annoying it can be to have to constantly shift the glass over to the other side of the...
Oh my goodness.
I was like...
I'm in heaven listening
right?
to this. This is so great.
Details.
This is like what... Like you're gonna look at this.
I'll tell my kids about it.
You remember this visit to this restaurant forever because of that moment. That's like the hot dog story at 11 Madison
with
Park.
Will
Yeah, it's
so good.
It's like, and the way he describes it is, it's not what's going to help them remember the restaurant forever as much as it will help them remember their trip to New York City forever
and how they feel.
Yes,
it's the feeling.
This is what clients want. This is what people in any sort of context like this want. In a restaurant, you want to feel seen and heard and understood. When you're buying a home, you want to feel seen and heard and understood. This is what creates retention. Like the old way is just being relentlessly aggressive.
Right, the boiler room.
Right, and it's now shifted entirely to connection first.
Yeah,
connection first, being with the person, and it's a more prolonged method of closing a deal, but it's more guaranteed. It's far more guaranteed, and the retention is like far more guaranteed.
Yes.
Like you can be really aggressive and you can get a lot of deals done, but the question becomes, are those clients going to work with you again?
Right. Are they going to remember you? That's probably the number one mistake that I see new agents make.
And that's the answer to the question.
It. They sacrifice the long-term sustainability of their mindset, of their business, of their bottom line for short-term gain.
Yep.
In all of its iterations.
And the long game continues even when you're 10 years into the business. Like I still have to remember, like this is a long game. I'm 13 years into this. But
your daughter's 2.
Yes.
She's going to be 18. She's going to go off to college. She's going to get married and maybe have children one day. Mm-hmm. You want to be granddad. You want to be there for her.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is the definition of a third culture entrepreneur?
Thank you for asking.
I had a feeling you'd like that question.
Thank you. Can I also have some more whiskey with that question?
Of course. I'm sorry that you had to ask.
No, all good.
Someone once told me that you should never go to an Italian restaurant and have to ask for Parmesan. They should just know to come over.
That is like salt and pepper. That's their version of salt and pepper. So, third culture entrepreneur, third culture individual, third culture kid. I didn't know that this was a term until just a few months ago. I got really sick over Christmas and New Year's earlier this year. Really, really sick. It wasn't COVID. I tested negative, but it was just the good old-fashioned flu, which I feel like we've forgotten about.
Yeah.
Kicked my ass. And I have no pre-existing conditions. I'm a young, healthy individual. Yeah. So I'm just like...
That happens.
Thank you for reminding me of how strong I am, but holy shit. So, really sick. I had 102 fever.
Oof.
Yeah, it was borderline, that's when they say, if it's 102, 103, now's the time to go to the doctor. I sweated it out. I waited it out. And for whatever reason, I started journaling on day 6 or 7 of being sick. And Will's working the whole time. I'm quarantined up in our loft, and he's just sending up water and echinacea and just checking in on me. And I'm journaling about who do I actually want to work with? Because when you're so sick and you're so delirious, the questions that have been waiting to be asked kind of come to the surface because there's no noise. I wasn't checking my phone. I told my director, I was like, I'm out, trout, if you have a 911, you're going to have to call Will, and then I can attempt to answer the question. But luckily, she respected that boundary and allowed me to get better. It also helped that it was that time of year when most real estate agents take time off too. So we were a little quieter on the sell-it front. Yeah. But I was asking myself, because I'd been feeling conflict in my messaging of who I wanted to work with. I was like, I want to work with CEOs and leaders, because if I work with the leaders and I help them revamp their mindset, their strategy, it'll trickle down to the organization. I was like, more impact, right? But that never quite resonated with me because I don't like relegating my business to only work with a certain job title. That felt performative. And so I was asking myself, who do I want to work with? And I was journaling, and it kind of came through. I was like, I want to work with people who understand what it's like to grow up in a household where there's so many different languages being spoken and you're soaking it up like a sponge. I'm sure, are your daughters bilingual?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I speak English and Spanish, and I speak a bit of Hebrew, but my father speaks fluent Japanese.
No way.
Yeah, my father was born and raised in Tokyo.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't know oh my gosh.
Yeah, my grandfather spoke Japanese, Arabic, Hebrew, French, Italian.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to work with people that knew what it was like to grow up with multiple languages, multiple cuisines, food that didn't look like the peanut butter and jelly of and the Lunchables of the other kids at school. And I remember thinking so when my father said, my grandmother's Colombian and she taught us Spanish. She taught us to speak Spanish. We learned to read and write in school because my parents were like, okay, grandma is teaching you how to speak it, but you need to learn how to read and write it. And I hated them at the time for it because I was like, grandma already is teaching us. Why do we need to learn in school? I'm so glad that they did. My mom spoke conversational Japanese, and then we also had English because my dad doesn't speak a lick of anything other than English. He was born in San Francisco like I was. And I remember, the dichotomy of when I would leave my house and go to school, and I'd be surrounded by just people speaking English and kids who looked like me but didn't understand me and all the different cultures and stories and beliefs in my head. In Latin culture and Asian cultures, family is everything. Expressed differently, right? And in Japanese culture, you're very humble. You're very demure. Even us making eye contact would be considered to be too bold.
Yeah.
In certain, exactly. Deference, right, to family, prioritization of the collective of the family over the individual. Sometimes, to the point of self-martyrdom, which is the dark side of it. And I wanted to work with people that understood that could bridge and find ways to honor the traditions and the beliefs of past generations, of where they came from, of literally what is in our DNA, and adapt it and nuance it and update it to be able to thrive and live on in the current landscape. Because to take what, my mom told me or what my grandparents told me and to do exactly as they said. Now, when that information was based on what the world was like 80, 90, 100 years ago, that's handicapping myself. The rules of the game have changed, especially in the era of digital. There's new information. And so I was like brain dumping all of this. And then when I was kind of feeling well enough, I dumped it all into ChatGPT. And I said, I'm a consultant. I work with entrepreneurs. I want to work with people who understand this, who want to rebrand themselves with their roots in mind. Is there a name for this? Because you have to name it.
That's how I named this podcast.
Literally. And it told me about a study that they did in the US in the 1960s. Oddly enough, post-World War II, my mom was in that generation of kids that they studied. She's half Japanese and half Irish. She was a military brat. And they said it was called third culture kids, that they have the culture of their homeland or homelands, the culture of where they grew up, and then they kind of blend the two and they make their own third culture from it.
Wow.
And one of the most notable characteristics that they found of these kids is that they have unmatched levels of empathy. Because they walk in multiple worlds, it gives them that perspective. We talked about perspective being powerful.
They understand what being different means.
Yeah, and that it's not a detriment. It's actually a superpower. Because with our world being so connected and travel being so easy, we're only going to create more and more of these types of individuals. And I feel like we're eventually, like that image of like the pendulum swinging from one extreme to the next, and it eventually settles in the center. In my mind, if you go back far enough, we're all related. We all came from the same village at some point in time. And just over the centuries, the millennia, we drew borders, we drew lines in the sand, we took up different coats of arms, we used different war paint, we used different languages, we developed different skin pigmentation purely based on where we lived and our exposure to the sun. And so I want to get back to that. I feel like the world can benefit with more levels of empathy and that global perspective. And so that's what a third culture individual is, and those are the individuals that I want to work with because I feel like they understand me.
It's a big mission. I like that.
Well, I told you I was dramatic.
So yes.
I got to go all in.
I absolutely love that. And then, by the way, I wasn't quite sure what the explanation was going to be. Like, I feel like I read this definition in your social media, but it's a lot clearer listening to you paint the picture.
Thank you.
I get a lot of outreach from young real estate agents. I try to speak to as many of them as I can.
Yeah.
They all want advice about what it takes to really get to their next measure of success in business. What's the one piece of advice you give to everyone looking for it when they reach out to you on LinkedIn or email? I got to imagine that in your position, you field a lot of random messages and emails, people who are stuck, people who have different issues. I would imagine there must be like one or two blanket pieces of advice that everyone gets. What are those?
Yeah, so I would say the most common one, responsible for the majority of the symptoms that I see, are that they are marketing a mile wide and an inch deep.
Interesting. Tell me more.
When I ask them, they'll ask me whatever question they ask me, and usually the quality of the question they ask is not the right question, but that's okay. That's why I'm here. They'll ask me, can you take a look at my website? Can you share an email template? People want to know, what does Ryan write in the emails? And I'm like, be patient. It's not what he's writing. Like, we know that, right? But they don't. And so I get that. People need to be told what to do until they know what to do for themselves. Like, that's something that's been a learning for me. But when I say mile wide, inch deep, I ask them, well, who do you want to do business with? And then they're like, I want to do business with anyone who wants to buy or sell in the state of Texas. I'm like, cool. It's very broad. And this is
tighten it up.
Yes. This is an insult for me when I say, not an insult, but it's a constructive criticism where I say that's very generic. Generic is bad. Well, not bad. I'll stay away from moralistic
Generic is
descriptors.
just generic.
Generic doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
It doesn't stand out. So you can go generic. You're not going to see the results you want. Pick your poison. And when you market and you create content and you show up and you pitch and you speak from an idea of, I'll work with anyone who wants to buy or sell in the state of Texas, because that's where I'm licensed. Even if you live in Austin and it would be a pain in the ass to try to get to El Paso, you'll still take it. You'll take any business. You'll say, yes, I get that. I've been there. But when you're marketing a mile wide and an inch deep, it's like, another analogy I like to use is, imagine, Ariel, if you wrote a love letter to your wife and you addressed it as, to whom it may concern.
That's good.
Can you please pick up the laundry on your way home from work tonight?
And some milk.
And some milk. How quickly would you be sleeping on the couch?
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
All right. That is what agents are doing. They are being insensitive, impersonal, generic, broad. And the rebuttal I hear in this conversation is, well, Ryan works with everyone around the world. Gary Vee says this. Alex Hormozy says that. And I'm like, that's great. You're not there yet.
Yeah.
You haven't earned the right to market in that way, because it's like, to weave in another analogy, when you buy a home, if you want to expand that development and make a family compound, you're not going to buy a lot on the other side of town. You're going to buy the adjacent lot. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to buy the lot on the other side, and then the lot on the other side, and you're going to slowly expand from a singular point. So what I want agents to do, that, like, literally the number one piece of advice, even if they don't know their identity yet, if they get specific, if they get an inch wide and a mile deep on who they want to work with, they will generate business. They'll generate more conversations, because even if they don't know who they are, if they know their customer, their ideal customer, that singular person, they'll have success.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
Like, we just have to realize that. It's a slow burn. Mm-hmm. It's a low and slow cook.
Yeah.
But that's how you get the best results.
Yes.
What is the biggest mistake you have ever made?
Oh.
I've asked almost everyone who's come on this show this question. Sometimes they take a few minutes to think.
Yeah. Biggest mistake I've ever made. Well, in my mind, it's only a mistake if I repeat it. Otherwise, it's just a lesson that hopefully I can share and save somebody else the agony and shorten the learning curve.
Well, that's the point of the question.
It is. So smart. The biggest mistake I've ever made is not trusting myself to figure it out.
Thinking you needed something or someone else.
Yes. Thinking I needed my ex. Thinking I needed that income. Thinking I needed that social status. Thinking I needed external validation. You don't really need that. You think you want it, but there's a difference between a want and a need. And not to say that my life isn't better in partnership. I thrive in partnership. That's why I love doing podcasts. That's why Candace and I have our podcast.
Yeah. You bounce well off other people.
I do, when I can have something to respond to. That's knowing myself. But I'm great on my own. I'm better with Will. I'm better with our team at Sell It. I'm better doing this podcast together with you. So I think it took me about 28 years to figure that out. Well, let's negate the first 10 years of my life, because I feel like that was just me being a kid. So it took me 20 years to figure out that all I need is myself. And then everything else is just like cherry on top energy.
Well, my hope is that in someone listening to that or watching this, is that they use that to just accelerate the timeline of their own realization.
Please.
Yes.
Do it in 2 years. Do it in 2 months.
Yeah.
Fuck, do it in 2 hours. Like, don't let me limit you.
Yeah.
Whatever goal you want to set.
I'm with you. I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
Then I'll have you out of here.
Take your time.
What's next for you, and how do you define next level?
Oh, man. You ask great questions.
Thank you.
What's next for me? So I think
Not what's next for Sirhan.
Right.
What's next for you?
Well, in the grander scheme of things, I think I want to lay the foundation to be able to have time to have a family.
Love that.
I have
It's the best job in the world.
Right? That's why we're all fucking doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
I have an incredible stepdaughter to be. She's fantastic. I love her. I would like to have one of my own, and I know what a time commitment that is. I know what a cataclysmic shift in my life that will create. So I'm working to put passive streams of income in place so that I can have the luxury of not always having to actively produce.
It'll never get in the way.
Yeah?
It won't. You know why? Because like this is what we're supposed to do. You know, like this is this is a fundamental purpose of being a human being. So you have to believe that the universe will protect you if you do that. You know, like of course, like anything else, it won't be easy.
No,
but
nothing worthwhile.
It will only elevate your life.
Yeah.
So, and I have a feeling you would be an exceptional mother. I think you should definitely go down that road.
Yeah. Will and I have been talking about it, and we're making shifts and moves now to like lay the groundwork, and you're never ready.
No, of course not.
Until you do the thing.
Yeah.
Even he is like, I'm like, you've already been through that. You're supposed to, you got the cheat code. He's like, no. He's like, I was 19. I had no idea. I'm like, damn it. All right. Well, we're in it together. And then your second question, what's next level?
How do you define next level?
How do I define next level? I think finding ways to be okay and accept being more visible. Because it's so funny. It's like a catch-22. And I see it with certain clients where I will challenge them and encourage them and inspire them to be more visible online, within their community, particularly real estate agents. And even though fundamentally we want to be seen and heard and understood, when you do that at mass, it can be really nerve-wracking to be seen by hundreds, thousands, millions of people. There comes with that pros and cons, but I think that's the next level, and not for the ego or the following or the accolades or whatever will matriculate from that, but because the more people that know me, the more people I can help.
Yes.
And I don't,
that's
level.
The overarching objective.
That's the overarching thing, right? Yeah. I have a weighty mission. The only way I can achieve that is if I am okay and excited to be more visible, to be more seen. So
the next level for you is being ready for that.
Yeah. Doing the mindset work to deal with the trolls, to deal with the comments, to deal with even the influx of business. Like my mind goes to systems, like setting up ManyChat and automations and bringing on a team and customer service and like legal paperwork, being like, I'm going to dial that back just a touch because it hasn't even happened yet.
Right.
But that's next level for me.
Don't prepare for rainy days. Enjoy the day's sunshine.
Yes. Especially being a summer baby.
Yeah. Okay. I have one last question for you. And I came up with this question somewhere while we were having this conversation.
Oh, I love those questions.
So picture yourself, you've just sat down at a gorgeous dining room table. You're at the head of the table. Mm-hmm. You sit down to a beautiful table setting. Mm-hmm. And from stage left comes your husband, or comes Will. Mm-hmm. And Will says to you, honey, I will make you anything you want. Mm. What do you decide?
Mac and cheese.
Really?
Yes.
He must make a killer mac and cheese.
He does. Oof. He uses like 8 different types of cheeses. He cooks the pasta just al dente, and it's mac and cheese.
A gourmet mac and cheese.
Yeah. Food is love for him, and that's ultimate comfort food. I mean, ramen also, but the love, the comfort, not that kind of comfort, but the other type of comfort.
Yeah, I got you.
Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. I love it.
Yeah.
Cheers to you.
Salud.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
was fun.
Oh my gosh, so much fun.